I'm reasonably fond of haggis. I mean,
Tim likes haggis.
Yeah,
I don't like haggis, but not because of comedy reasons. I just don't like it.
no, I mean there was some point someone on the internet was. There was some competition, and the prize was a year's supply of vegetarian haggis. And I thought, is that a number greater than one?
Now, vegetarian, that was, I believe I said this at the time, speaks a man who has never stuffed a chicken with a vegetarian haggis. It's a very, very nice stuffing for chicken.
Fair, your honest, sonsy face. Great chieftain of the pudding race. A boona yet. Tack your place. Punch, stripe, and dame. Hello, I'm Andrew Rillstone.
I'm Clarrie Maguire.
And this is
Folk
Buddies. And this is a sort of a programme of both celebration and sadness, because we are celebrating Scottish independence, and that means as British people we're also quite sad, because we used to think that Ben Nevis and Loch Lomond and Loch Ness were ours. And now they're not ours; they're foreign, and that's gonna seem really strange. But it's good that the Scottish people have spoken. It brings Cornish independence that much closer, and we've got haggis, haven't we? I'm wearing a kilt.
I'm playing threateningly with a penknife.
I've got.
Unrelated.
We've got some tea cakes, or however you say it. To have afterwards, possibly even some iron brew, lots of other stereotypes, and what we're not going to do is we're not going to talk about the politics, because we did one on English nationalism, and that really turned out well. So, but what we are going to do is
it turned out well for me. Because everyone wrote in saying, "Oh, Clarrie's brilliant," and we all agree with her opinion.
I don't actually remember that. I think anyway, we don't get to talk about that. But we are to celebrate Scottish independence, and it's also National Podcast Day, although it won't be when this goes out.
No.
Tell me about National Podcast Day.
It's a national day for podcasts. I learned about it 4 minutes ago.
I learned about it an hour and a half ago, so I don't know very much about it. But anyway, for all of you people celebrating National Podcast Day, but Jim Ladd, no, that's Talk Like a Pirate Day. That's different.
That was quite a long time ago.
Yes, I tried to turn that. Did you see me trying to subvert that into Talk Like a Scotsman Day?
Probably.
Anyway, what we are going to do is
you usually quite cleverly subvert Talk Like a Pirate Day, because you're quite knowledgeable about pirates, aren't you?
Yeah, fairly knowledgeable about
so
pirates. I once wrote a game about pirates that was described in the Daily Telegraph as adequate.
Indeed, and that was a proper game, not the card games like the other games. That was a proper computer game.
All of my games are proper games, but it was a computer game that was described in the Daily Telegraph as adequate. Yes, so I normally turn Talk Like a Pirate Day into actually quoting things that pirates are known to have said, which are generally verbose and pompous, and I really like pirates.
Everyone says, "Oh, Andrew, you're so clever."
No, it's the great quote from Bartholomew Roberts, who may have been Scottish, about I can't remember. It goes on for ages, but I'm twice as rich as any sailor, and we're going to cut this because I can't remember exactly how it goes. There's also a good quote from Blackbeard, though that's much better. Where he shoots his own first mate in the leg and says, "Well, if I didn't now and again kill one of you, you would forget who I am." Daniel Defoe generally says that he says that.
I like the similarly don't probe too much into whether it was actually said that gets attributed to Anne Bonny, which is if you'd fought like a man, you would not now hang like a dog.
Yeah, I think that may be more verifiable, because we do actually have proper trial
that's brilliant.
trial transcripts of Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Anyway, one day we're going to do a podcast about pirates, but today we're doing a podcast about Scotland. So we made up a big playlist of Scottish songs.
Yes.
Now, this is quite interesting, because when we did our completely non-controversial podcast about English songs, with one song which we're not going to mention accepted, it was actually quite hard. I found it quite hard to find I could do a playlist of songs by English artists, but songs that were English with a big E, or which were about England, were actually rather hard to track down. I'm not Scottish, although I'm doing the accent today in the spirit of the thing. But I'm not Scottish. I don't have any Scottish relatives. Do have a bottle of Scotch whisky. But I found putting the playlist together. Someone described it as bloated.
I thought it was. I will say, explain what I thought about the playlist.
I found that I put some obvious songs in, and then I put some more obvious songs in, and then I thought, well, I've forgotten that one, and I've forgotten that one, and then about a few days later I thought, well, I've got to have that one, and the list just got longer and longer. Found that there were lots and lots of really good, not only songs by Scottish artists, but songs by Scottish artists which are Scottish, which are sort of emphatically Scottish. I had a lot of fun, but I mean, there's one obvious reason, of course, why I found I was putting so many of my favourite songs onto the list.
Because of June Tabor doing a load of them, I would imagine.
Well, June Tabor hang on. June Tabor did a whole album of Scottish songs, An Echo of Hooves, I think it's called. Obviously, Dick Gaughan, we both like Dick Gaughan, Ewan McLennan, Alistair Roberts, so a lot of these people. There was actually a bigger meta folkier reason, if you think about it. Child ballads.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of these, I only realised this looking at it today, but a lot of these that I picked are child ballads.
Do you know, I'm a massive idiot, because I was looking through the list, and as has been, gracefully hinted beforehand, there'd been emails going back and forth about this playlist, because I thought that it was a bit bloated and a bit samey, and to be honest, I thought it was. When I was listening to it, I was thinking, this is much, much more Andrew's cup of tea. And I always just loosely describe yours as being the more traditional end of folk, but you are much more into essentially the child ballads than
yes,
I am. Which
I mean, I did invite my learned friend to add some songs to this, which you did.
I tell you what did surprise me, given that this would unite us. There's not one. We did. Neither of us thought to put Erin Pollard. We're
not going to study it.
No, I wasn't even doing that as a deliberate joke. I thought I was basically going, don't forget what her name is, don't forget what her name is, don't forget what her name is. Corinne Pollard.
Yes. Now, the probable reason for that, and given that the list was huge anyway, and I mean, you said I think you said it before we came on air that there are I put a lot of songs in by the same artists.
Yeah.
But it was like, well, hang on, minimal Scottish playlist. It's got to have now wrestling wins. It's got to have no gods and precious few heroes. In fact, I cut off the playlist, but I was actually saying it's got to have both sides of the tweed. Well, that's 4 Dick Gaughan songs before we start, because Dick Gaughan is fantastic. While Corinne Pollard is arguably Scottish, I think she's definitely Scottish.
Yes.
When I'm thinking of song titles. You're going to immediately think of one, but there wasn't one of her songs that was "Way It's Depressing in Scotland" or "Way I Like Haggis" or something. Okay, of the things that I put on here, you said you found my list stodgy.
No, that's one word I never used.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Bloated and samey.
Okay, you found on my bloated and samey list. Which one stuck out as being ones you liked?
Well, there's none that I dislike. Okay. That's the point. I think if you followed the thing which I just assumed for playlists, which is that you try to only have one by each artist.
Okay.
I think it's very unlikely that any you chose would have been one that I didn't like.
Okay. Okay, but as it was, what?
I mean, you can't go wrong with Sir Patrick with Sir Patrick Spence, can you? That's
Now there was the Swabs and Carthy version
Yeah.
of Patrick Spence. How do you think that one stands up to other versions? Because it's probably my favourite version, but then it's the Martin Carthy version, so it would be.
It's one of those ones where I have very little objectivity, because of course the first I'd have heard Fairport doing it, and I'd have heard that for 15 years before I heard any other version.
Yeah.
So that's actually one of the ones that I will still be listening to a version on an album by some that I've not heard before by someone, and suddenly realise halfway through that it's that song.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I no real.
The thing of that, the reason I picked that version, which I think I'm correct in saying that Carthy is very consciously following Nick Jones. I think Nick Jones put it to that tune. There are a couple of other very good ones. June Tabor, there's a very dramatic one. Martin Simpson's one I find a bit truncated. But the great thing, as always, with Carthy is it's all 27 verses. He doesn't cut anything. And I think, in the way that with some movies, where the directors, where with the movie, sometimes the director's cut feels shorter because the pacing is better. I'm not going to read out the lyrics of every song we talk about, don't worry. But the thing in the Carthy version, to Norroway, to far Norroway, to Norroway over the phone. It's the king's daughter of far Norroway, and we must bring her home. And they set sail with all good speed on a Monday in the morn, and they arrive far over the sea on Wednesday in the eve. Those two verses tend to get cut because, but actually, hearing him singing it, it's much easier to follow the plot. So I really like that sort of. Well, obviously, it's the thing I like about Carthy. No concessions. It's storytelling.
Did I? This is really bad, because I think I've imagined that it was Anais Mitchell in that, but some young band did a really good version of it recently.
I think Patrick Spencer's on that Anais Mitchell thing, and that will be another one that will be very. I think that they will be following either Carthy or Jones. It's another version of this tune.
Yeah.
Incidentally, that album has grown and grown on me.
I'm glad.
Since I was.
Well, you thought it was all right, but you couldn't understand why everyone was going crazy over it. Did you?
I still think it's conservative. I still think I still feels like it's doing covers, but it has grown on me.
So I thought the opposite. I thought it made them feel like fresh songs again, as opposed to someone doing Sir Patrick Spence.
Okay.
Or whatever,
So what else was there on my list that was noteworthy?
I think I would have. I remembered there being a lot more Dick Gagan on the list.
That's because maybe as I've written them down here, I've spread them out. I had, but I think actually I did when you said curtail it slightly. Yeah. I think I decided we could manage without both sides of the tweed, lovely as it is.
Because I honestly could have. If you'd asked me, I would have said there were half a dozen Dick.
No, we had. Has your opinion on Dick Gaughan changed since we've seen him live a couple of times? Because centuries ago, when we were young and beautiful, and I was listening to Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan and not much else.
Yeah.
You gave me some compilation discs, some copies of some Dick Gaughan songs, or some Dick Gaughan albums, and said you've got to listen to this person. Yeah. And initially, I didn't like him very much.
No,
I listened to him and thought, he's a bit growly, he's a bit cross. I don't really agree with that song about Jesus. And as I've listened to it more and more, I've become really keen. And actually, I really rather like the Russells and Jesus song. It's a Nietzschean Jesus, but fair enough. And you've gone rather cold to Dick Gaughan. Is that because you found him annoying live?
No,
he's a bit.
I think I always skipped a lot of his tracks on albums. I think. If I was describing him to people, I'd always be describing the Dick Gaughan who does the Stand Up for Judas, etc., etc.
I still think he does the best diggers. Well, turns upside down.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I just burst into, for the people at home, I just burst into laughter silently because I had to stop the song title "Sing the World from Both Sides Now," which is what was coming out of, which is not the title, but it's not the name of the song anyway. But yes, I think I was never a big fan of his more kind of mopey traditionalist stuff. And it feels like that's a much, much bigger part of his work than I thought it was at the time I was mad on him.
I mean, when you go and see him, he will do some aggressive protest songs. You say there's too much Dick Gaughan on this playlist. I left out Thomas Muir of Hunter's Hill, which is, and particularly in the light of the Scottish independence, I just that terrific. When you're called for jury service, when your name is called by lot, don't take these things for granted, for dearly were they bought. And he could sometimes talk for 20 minutes before the song on the background to it. He'll do that. There will also be a point where he sits down and plays some very long Scottish pipe lament on a guitar, which can be brilliant, challenging. He also does. Will do. I was just about to say pop songs, but he will also do much more modern. He'll do a Geronimo's Cadillac or a Vincent Black Lightning or something. The traditional things he never fails to sing, which is on this playlist. He never fails to sing "Now Rest Them Winds" by Harry Burns, which he always Gaughan says that song says everything that it is conceivably possible to say about anything. Which.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go that far.
I tell you what, you were saying about picking out exceptional ones and that. I think what's going to be more useful than saying whether or not I like things and that is if I say which ones I would have put on if I'd done the whole playlist.
Otherwise, my next question was going to be which one were there any on my list that you hated?
I don't think there's any that I hated,
except for the ones you were meant to hate, which we'll come to at the end.
Yeah, I didn't take the same joy from one that you seem to take. But if I was choosing one Dick Gaughan to go on here, it would have been Muir the Master Builder.
Ah, tell us about Muir the Master Builder, or Muir and the Master Builder.
I think it's better if you tell them about Muir the Master Builder.
Oh, okay.
Because
okay. If you as I sometimes say, if you were to go by my iPod, what is my favourite song? Well, that's the one we don't talk about.
Oh, apart from Roots.
Apart from the one we don't talk about. My second favourite song is one of the hippie lovey ones by Chumbawamba, actually. It's Word Bomber. And this is some of the things I've listened to most of. But third
is Billy No Boats.
Is it? Oh no, I don't think. In terms of if you went by my iPod as to what I played the most, that's what I played the most. My third would certainly be Muir and the Master Builder. I think it is a fantastic song. Have you been to the United States?
Yes.
Have you been in Yosemite or Yellowstone or any of these places?
I have. I've been there. Which one's the one in California?
That will be Yosemite, won't it?
I've been in Yosemite.
Yeah, I went to Yosemite National Park when I stayed with my friend Kevin, who was doing something frightfully clever with computers at San Diego University. And he took us on a long road trip, and we spent a day in Yosemite back when I thought it was pronounced Yosemite. I didn't know the Star Trek joke either. In the terrible Star Trek movie, but where Kirk is climbing a cliff. Yeah. That's Yosemite National Park, and the name of the cliff is Captain. But no, and I remember seeing there's a memorial there to I think it's supposed to be the spot when in 1902 or something when John Muir sat down with Roosevelt. The president was so moved by what he was saying about that they sort of came up with the national park and preserving the wilderness. So. Actually, that's a non sequitur, because I think one of the things which is great about that song is that if you didn't know who he was or what the background was, I think the song just stands up itself. I think its structure. I think if you listen to, it was written. I could tell you it was written by, if I thought, by Brian McNeill, the Battlefield Band. And it's one of the things of what an interpreter of songs Dick Gaughan is, because if you look at the little changes that he makes, his version feels a little bit more felt. And I think he actually interpolates the line end of just repeating "God lives above the redwoods," but it's incredibly powerful. I just love that song, and it contains the phrase "Scotland the Brave." He says, "Would you, if a different fortune called,
would you have done the same for
Scotland the Brave, your home and your fathers?" Yeah. Which elsewhere, Dick Gaughan sings a song by Brian McNeill, which is very down on the expression "Scotland the Brave."
Because I thought you were going to go in a completely different direction, because when you were saying about songs you listen to most, because what strikes me about that song and what possibly appealed was that it has that kind of Woody Guthrie, Stan Rogers, American working class industrial-y type thing to it, as well as, despite being about this wilderness, I'm really not putting it across very well, but
hang on, I would never have made that comparison. But since Dick Gaughan likes Woody Guthrie, I like Woody Guthrie. I have no idea whether Brian McNeill likes Woody Guthrie. He probably does. He's a folk singer. Obviously Woody Guthrie does have the wilderness side to it as well. I don't know that song seems, on the Master Builder. It's actually very complex. It's very theological, very, very mystical, which is what John Muir was, I believe. It was all about the theology of light and what light meant and all this stuff. I would not have made that connection, but now you have made it, I am intrigued.
It wasn't much more than an overall feeling. It's kind of. If I was making a mixtape, I would have put it between some Stan Rogers and someone else,
So what you were saying was you just say things that you would have put on.
Well, that's what I mean. If there's like a bunch of tracks by the same artist, I'm choosing which ones I would have put on. I think I'd have gone for A Man's a Man with Ewan McLennan.
Yeah.
They're both very good songs. But I think A Man's a Man does similar to what we were talking about with Anais Mitchell, and making it sound like a living song again rather than just someone doing the poem.
Yes, absolutely, and he's very good at it because he has that soft voice, and that Ewan McLennan can recreate. So a lot of these songs, but that was Jock Stewart as well, which is a song which you would be expecting to either be the Pogues, or else it would just be a lot of drunken Scotsmen in a bar singing it out. And he makes it gentle, and he does it too. He does Auld Lang Syne. You see, I could have put Auld Lang Syne, which he does, which is the worst. You would have thought was the worst song in the world, and then he actually sings it as a song, and no, it's lovely. Actually, just plays the tune, doesn't he? And he also does not that it's Scottish, but he does Pete Seeger's Banks Are Made of Marble, which he also cuts right back and just looks sweet. But Ewan
McLennan is fantastic. Has his thing been and gone?
No, it's this Sunday.
This Sunday,
yeah.
I have to remember that.
Definitely with.
Where's this?
Folkhouse.
Folkhouse.
Yeah.
Right.
So, gentle listeners, if you want to hear probably our second or third favourite Scottish folk singer, you've missed it. By the time this goes out, you've missed it. In fact, it's quite possible that at this point you're going to hear a review. What about the ballads? Okay, I had too many ballads. But you've said you like Patrick Spence. Again, you see, Jim Tabor. You see, I put Hughie Graham and the Duke of Athlon's Nurse. You were lucky we didn't have the cutting the heads off by the hawthorn tree or however it goes. There's a wonderful long.
Andrew is trying to think of the Battle of Otterburn, and it's a briar bush. not a hawthorn tree.
Long epic
I think the problem with June
Tabor.
June Tabor is that when she's good, she's very, very good. She unfortunately sometimes seems to have a kind of mode in which she'll do all of X type of song.
Okay.
And I think having putting Huey Graham and Susie Cleland on really shows up that despite them being different songs, they sound really similar the way she does them.
Okay, no, you see, I would have happily said that Huey Graham and the Duke of Athlow's Nurse, which I have to say, in a way, the Duke of Athlow's Nurse, I think, is a great song. It's a great story. I don't know that I'm amazed by her interpretation of it, whereas I do think her interpretation of the Huey Graham song is just perfect as a piece of storytelling. I don't think that could be bettered. I think that the Susie Cleland is very different because it's the oyster bound behind her. That it's more. If I would say it's more of a song, you know what I mean.
But I think she does them both in a kind of type way, which, yeah, I think I'm fairly sure I'm not confusing Huey Graham and Duke of Atholl.
Huey Graham is the man who stole the Bishop's horse.
Yeah, because they're both fine songs. I possibly, if anything, prefer Huey Graham. But
yeah, I that's one of my top 5 or 10 songs. And this is what I found really interesting about putting this list together. I mean, you were saying, I'm not overexcited. I really wanted to go forward with it because I wouldn't have said I have no affinity. I've no romantic affinity with Scotland.
No.
I have been to Scotland.
Yeah.
I once went for a job interview in Dundee, and I have never. When the person interviewing me said, "Do you really want to move to Dundee?" and I said, "Oh, yes. It looks quite pretty." And I assume you've got a Starbucks. I mean, I know I can be. Yes, no. I'm very glad they would turn me down for that one.
I went to Edinburgh for my honeymoon.
Oh right.
It rained, and we saw the Camera Obscura, and then we came home.
I've been to Edinburgh. I think Brian of Coffee Blog fame was. I think it was Edinburgh. Yeah, he was at Edinburgh University in Edinburgh, working in Edinburgh Observatory because he did his PhD in astronomy, and I've never told this story before. That me and a mate had gone to visit him, and he'd said, come into my office in the observatory at 5 o'clock, and we turned up, and he said, I said, how's your day been? And he said, I just spent the whole day staring into space. Which, of course, I realised that academic astronomers don't do that, so it's a perfectly reasonable. It was one of those, yes. Anyway,
I like to imagine that he's got a spreadsheet of everyone who he sees after work, so that he can say that without ever doing it twice.
That's probably true, but no. What does Scotland mean to you?
The sad thing, sadly for Scotland, my main experience of Scotland is Cumbernauld. The Cumbernauld, the decaying new town on the outskirts of Glasgow, where a majority of my Scottish relatives will live, which was promoted with the slogan, "What's it called? Cumbernauld."
Yes.
And is a shithole. But if someone held me at gunpoint and made me do a Scottish tourism advert, I probably would do, like, I don't know, the Highlands and wolves and shit.
Yeah.
But a loch.
Yeah.
I really like Edinburgh.
Edinburgh's pretty.
Edinburgh Gothic is kind of everything's very black and knackered.
I've been on a boat on Loch Ness.
Yes.
She's very pretty. I mean, Loch Ness. you wish they would shut up about the bloody monster, because Loch Ness is actually spooky and scary and just big enough without a made-up
It
legend
is.
about a sea serpent.
Particularly if I went there with Tim and someone else, and all three of us are scared of the idea of something big in a body of water.
Yeah.
So even though none of us actually consider Nessie to be a thing, we were bricking ourselves just being next to it.
Because I know exactly when that holiday was. Have I ever told this story
You've got
on air?
handy mnemonic.
Have I ever told this story on air? I don't think I have. Because it was, we sailed in from... We were on one of those little
The pedalo.
More than a pedalo, one of those little boats you rent. So it sleeps 4 people. But we did. We went across Loch Ness to Fort William, and then I think we may have actually walked the distance to Ben Nevis. We did not climb Ben Nevis, but we went up Ben Nevis on a cable car.
The brakes went on our car on Ben Nevis.
And that was very pretty. And we took some pictures of ourselves on Ben Nevis. This is me and Flash, who we've talked about, and other people. And then we came down Ben Nevis and actually got a taxi back to where the boat was. And the taxi driver said, "Oh, there's been something terrible on the news. Aeroplanes crashed into a skyscraper in America."
Oh.
And we thought, that's a bit sad. We didn't actually realise it was big. It was. But yes, so we know we've actually got pictures of ourselves. We have an alibi.
I was talking to Americans about open all hours when it happened, so no one would make that up.
The what does Scotland mean to you thing, apart from that, it's going to give me the pretext to read something in a minute. Something else I found quite interesting, putting this all together, is obviously we know symbolism of England. We just get stuck. It's either Morris dancers or Oswald Mosley or something. I don't know. But I was just, and I'm sure now we've had an English podcast and a Scottish podcast. At some point we'll have to have an Irish podcast.
Oh.
But the thing of your
The Irish podcast will just appear on everyone's iTunes without knowing.
oh, that's very good. But no, so there will be a way of doing slightly cod Irish songs, which would all be leprechauns and shamrocks and whoa, beat me old mother over the head with a shillelagh, which is ghastly.
As we know. One of your favourite artists produced.
Oh,
just such a
good lord! Yes, yes, Mr. Lennon's "Luck of the Irish." Yes, the thing I was going to say was that I feel, and all our Scottish listeners are going to write in, but I feel
what address are they going to write in?
They're going to write it. They're going to write in to mail MAIL at phonebuddies.co.uk.
Yes, they are.
The equivalent picture postcard Scotland, haggis and bagpipes and whiskey, actually doesn't seem to me to be as ghastly or as fake. I mean, there actually are Scottish bagpipers, and Scottish people do drink whiskey, or they certainly make a lot of whiskey in Scotland. There doesn't seem to be that same, here's the big red-headed guy with the unicorn sitting on the shamrock, and that's got nothing to do with the actual country.
No, I think I can see where you're coming from. I mean, my ultimate argument is that they're both just at different stages of the kind of reduction.
Yes.
Yeah, I sort of think you're right. I mean, obviously, Tourist Scotland is fraudulent Scotland still, but sorry, I'm starting to do a nice little treatise in my head.
I'll tell you what, I'll open my beer, you work it out in your head, and then you can say it out loud.
Well, all I was thinking was, if I can do the thing to open my beer. So I genuinely was playing with a penknife earlier. I wasn't just being racist. We got a bottle opener on a penknife. I'm wondering whether it's a combination of the fact that the Scottish diaspora was longer ago than the Irish, and the fact that because of that, the majority of the people around the world who consider themselves, Scottish in the same way Americans say, "Oh, hello, I'm Irish and Scandinavian." You're not. You're from Birmingham, Alabama, sort of thing. The majority of those would have been slightly higher up the kind of class structure. They would have been officers and things rather than skivvies or desperate immigrants. So they kind of get to choose their own mythology.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, that's the connection between Dick Cocken and Stan Rogers, of course. Canada. Shed loads of Scottish
Oh yeah,
people in Canada.
oh yeah, because the Scots Gaelic music scene and things in Canada is so much bigger than it is in Scotland.
Yeah.
Because do you ever read
No,
Hark, There's a Vagrant is the name of the cartoon.
I know
she
the title,
does.
but yeah, I don't know.
And she writes a lot about it because she grew up in very rural coastal Canada, and where in an area where old people still routinely speak Gaelic, and,
Yeah.
and that, and it's just she writes very interestingly about it. We'll drop in the name towards the end when we remember.
Louise said, Louise Opera Buddy, when she came back from Canada, that she just noticed various very small things where I might describe a restaurant as it's a bit posh. She goes, the Canadian friends were saying it's a bit fancy, which is very Scottish.
Yeah.
Very, just. Can I read out something appallingly racist about Scottish people?
Oh, you're bigger than me. I can't stop you.
This is Mr. C.S. Lewis, who was
Wrote kids' books,
he wrote kids' books. He was a Oxford academic, and he wrote kids' books. Actually, this is a diary entry when he was probably younger and less holy. But he says, and that brings me to the curious fact that nothing militates so much against Walter Scott as his popularity in Scotland. The Scotch, he insists on this, the Scotch have a curious way of rendering wearisome to the outside world whatever they admire. I dare say Burns is quite a good poet, really. If only he could escape from the stench of that unmerciful haggis and the lugubrious jollities of Old Lang Syne. What a world it opens upon, the Cale Yard School, beside the Body Briar. I have just suddenly, as I write, seen what is the trouble about all this Scotchness. When you want to be typically English, you pretend to be very hospitable and honest and hearty. When you want to be typically Irish, you try to be very witty and daring and fanciful. That is to say, the typical English or Irish mode consists in the assumption of certain qualities which are, in themselves, quite pleasant. But the typically Scotch consists not in being loud or quiet, or merry or sad, or in any recognisable quality, but just in being Scotch. We make roast beef the English dish because it's nice, or fairly nice, and the rose is a pleasant flower, but the haggis and the thistle never could have any merit beyond their sheer, unredeemed, monumental Scotchness.
See, you missed a trick here.
Yeah.
Because he was from Ulster, wasn't he?
Sorry? Yeah, he was.
He was. So, nothing militates so much against Scott as his popularity in Scotland. I can't do an Ulster accent.
Lewis didn't sound like
No,
that.
I know,
Lewis
he
sounded
didn't.
sounded terribly posh.
He went to English public schools, didn't he?
Yes.
So of course it didn't sound like that.
Obviously, that's Lewis being brilliantly cantankerous, and
Yes.
Lewis to militate against the he said militate, but Lewis to set against the Holy Lewis on the internet. But do you think there is anything to that of the typical Scotchness is just Scotsness is in simply being Scots?
I know this is the tired thing I always say, and I think it's kind of right and wrong, because I think you've got the things. I think the thing with Scotland is it's the same as England in that you've got country Scotland and city Scotland, and it might as well be two different countries culturally. The way different people identify themselves and things. So I think it ends up being true just by dint of a nation kind of wanting to go, we're Scottish, despite the fact that I am probably culturally more like someone from Peru than I am from someone from Fort William. But so I'm just going to get cards with. I think you'll find it a bit more complicated than that printed on them.
One other song that was on my playlist, which tends to massively divide people, was Generations of Change. To Do you like that one, or is that a horribly cloying bit of
I
sentimental?
have no idea. As I said to you earlier, slightly snippily, I listened to this playlist several times. I probably listened to it about 5 times.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I had the same opinion of that song twice.
Oh, that's interesting.
There was certainly... it did certainly strike me, because I listened to it twice today, the playlist, and on one turn I was yes, this is fucking brilliant, this is the best song ever. And the next one I was exactly like you said, I was going, oh, this is cloying and kind of stating the obvious. But I loved it for the fact that it had a bit of ambiguity in what it was talking about, and for not just being about the past, I think, is another thing. You know, there's a lovely line in it with something like the son going off to work on the oil fields and looking like something and sounding like a Yank.
Like oilmen, like oilmen they walk, and like Yankees they talk.
Yeah.
There's no match in common betwixt my sons and me.
And I loved that whole section for kind of the fact that he was for being sad about the losses, but relieved at the jobs, basically.
I think the thing which I like about the song, I mean, when I first heard it on a radio show called Folkways that they don't do anymore, but I didn't know it at all, and the fact that in a way I was almost not expecting it to go on to the kids, and the fact that it's all the generations, and the fact that the singer, I don't think, it's sad because he's old, but I think the whole point of it is that he seems to be completely serene. I didn't do what my dad did. My kids don't do what I did. I don't know what my grandkids are going to grow up to be. But I think it's
the change is the importance, not the generation sort of thing.
Now, explain to me, because normally when we talk about Bell and Sebastian, it goes well.
Yeah.
I thought that was lovely. It was the Scottish Widows instrumental piece.
Yeah.
What was it?
It was. It's not Bell and Sebastian.
No, it's not.
It's someone else.
I'm fairly sure it's a Bell and Sebastian.
I think it was an album curated by Bell and Sebastian.
Ah, that was the bit I didn't understand. Okay. That's why I say
we can check it and put it in the notes, but I'll have to remember. It's an instrumental piece riffing off the Scottish Widows music. That's really all it is, yeah.
Right.
And I've just always found it a very... I like it as a piece of music. It seemed to be closer to folk than anything else, and I think it was tying into what we've been talking about, the whole pop cultural things of Scotland. Yeah. Though I don't think those adverts are on anymore, are they? So
they're just on
they are on.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant! Then.
Yeah.
So.
And you also had the Willow song, the cover of the the Wicker Man.
Because obviously, if it had been me, the playlist would have been the Wicker Man soundtrack.
Yeah.
The album, which I think is called Songs for the Wicker Man, which is all the traditional stuff that influenced the thing. Because there's very little on this Wicker Man soundtrack that's purely trad. Yeah. But there is a lot on the Wicker Man that's 3 trad things bolted together. Yeah. And there's a very, very, very good album put out by... Oh, do you know, I was going to say it's Trunk Records. It's not Trunk Records. It's... I want to say Footloose, but maybe not. I'll put it in the notes because it's one of the really, really good little... there's a couple of record labels that I would just spend all my money on if I was allowed to, and it's one of those. But it has... sadly, it's not on Spotify, which is really frustrating because it's got lots of versions of things that you can't find anywhere else. And that's what I would have put on there.
Speaking of things not being on Spotify, this is going back out of order because it's going back to ballads. But with the sort of ballad section, I had Alistair Roberts, who is our other favourite Scottish writer.
Fantastic!
Now that song, the Outlaw of the Hills, you weren't at the Farrow Collective concert.
I wasn't.
But they are. I expected the Farrow Collective to be a one-off, but they are still existing as the Farrow Collective, and it says it's him, it's Emily Portman. And 2 other people.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic. They're individually fantastic.
Basically,
musicians.
it could be him, Emily Portman, Hitler, and Stalin. It would still be the
But
best.
it's actually
The Farrow Collective consists of Emily Portman, Lucy Farrell and Rachel Newton, who are together the Emily Portman trio, plus Alistair Roberts.
Musicians, and they're all individually leads. They do quite an odd thing, really, that they each lead a song. But that song, Outlaw of the Hills, I think, is the best thing on the album. Although Emily Portman, I think, does a great one about a troll woman who comes and basically eats everything in a knight's house, which is great. But I think Outlaw of the Hills. I mean, did you agree with me that was marvellous?
What,
The Alistair Roberts song on the playlist. The guy's the rebel, and his girlfriend has betrayed him, and he's going to be hung. But the undaunted young outlaw.
We're not talking about this playlist.
Yeah, we are. Outlaw of the Hills was on this one.
Oh, right.
Did you miss it? The point is, I put that one because it's fantastic. And if we do the awards show this year, it's may very well be nominated for the best cover version. Well, though a young lad did a very good Beeswing, but anyway, we'll get onto that.
For listeners at home, I just made my flow out of Andy Cap face.
Anyway. But my problem is that listening to it again just before I came out, he is very specifically, because he's Captain Brennan, and he's very specifically in the hills of Kilkennan. So although it's Alistair Roberts, it's an Irish ballad. But that's all right.
It's all the same.
That brings us to the less traditional stuff. Now, I only thought at the last minute, Proclaimers. I've left the Proclaimers out. I can't leave the Proclaimers out. Now, at Trowbridge 2 years ago, you were really.
I went from Proclaimers sceptical to I now quite enjoy the Proclaimers.
You more than quite enjoyed them. You were.
Certainly on this place, Letter for America was destroying me. Well, it was today when I was listening to it. I listened to the playlist.
Destroying.
Oh, it was just. You've got to remember, Letter from America is going to be very similar to a hell of a lot of the stuff that I grew up listening to from the Irish side of things. And it was just. I mean, it's possibly partly because I was also listening to it. Oh, God, after a whole thing with Captain America and the war. A friend of ours made me watch a fan-made video of Captain America from the films, the Marvel films, edited together with "The War was in Colour" on the soundtrack by can't remember who did it, but they're a very good band and you quite like them.
Okay,
and it's basically
The War Was in Colour is
humanity and
Carbon
Leaf. And it was just I am now a human being who has cried to a Marvel Comics fan video. So,
the two Captain America movies were great.
They are, and I said to you when they came out, they really affected me emotionally in that they made me kind of see. It sounds such a fucking stupid thing to say because it's Captain America, but the lad doing it is really good, and it really managed to show you what the idealised form of patriotism is to people who look up to it.
Oh, I think that those films got, and we're not off topic because it is about patriotism. I think they did something which most of the good Captain America comics have done. There have been bad Captain America comics that have been very gung-ho.
Oh, I always forget you're a massive Captain
America fan. But the good Captain America comics have always been the way you treat this character who is the personification of everything that America wants to be. You're not cynical about him. You put him in a cynical world and leave him as not naive. He's not naive, but as the good guy, the guy who is uncorrupt. And I thought that those films capture that, and the temptation would have been to take the mickey, and they didn't.
That's what I love that they don't.
No. What is there a good Scottish superhero?
Well,
is there a Scottish superhero?
Supergran. She's got more bottle than United Dairies and so on.
I think that may have passed me by.
Literally, I'm not making this up. The first record that I ever bought in my life was the Supergran soundtrack, which was Billy Connolly. She makes them look like a
bunch of fairies, got more bottles than United Dairies.
And which someone ruined for me recently because they pointed out while it's still a delightful children's programme, there is just a really, really homophobic line in the song. She calls all her baddies a bunch of fairies or something, and you just she makes Batman and Superman look like a bunch of fairies. The problem is,
I know. I think. Sorry, I was going to say. I think you can be hyper PC. I don't mean. I
wouldn't. I'm not
sorry, an
discarding.
ideal. Sorry.
I'm not purging myself of my love of Supergran, but I think it's you can say, oh, I'm not going to purge myself of it, while still going, oh, I'd tut at someone for saying that in a song now.
Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
But I'm not necessarily wanting to let a kid think that's an okay thing to say.
Yeah, it's very true. Because that's the other thing I've been thinking about silly Scottish things. We all grew up reading DC Thompson comics, which are totally except they're not totally Scottish. They've got no Scottish reference in them.
What's the best one? DC Thompson humorless Scottish kids.
Probably, if anything, the whole thing of those comics is that they're some Scotsman's idea of England. Or South.
What strikes me with the DC Thompson comics is how much more they seem like Newcastle than Scotland.
Yeah.
Because all the old people are Scottish, and all the younger people are just hyper northern.
Yeah, that's true. And there was a strip called The Jocks and the Georges.
There was the Jocks versus the Georges.
The Jocks versus the Georges.
Yeah.
Yes. And anyone under 25 or American has now just said, what were they word?
I've got to find a picture for the podcast thing, because the way they drew the various camps in this was just hilarious, and as you say, will be so confusing to anyone outside the UK, because they didn't even draw them. It's not like they drew stereotypes from these two lands. They just went, right, that's what we're going to tell kids is a stereotype version of Scotland, and that's what we're going to tell kids is a stereotype version of Georgia.
Well, one of those documentaries about the history of them, in the war, they were representing Mussolini as a sort of an ice cream salesman or something. That was the far as they could get to Italians, was, I'm a like the ice creamer. Okay, so but Claimants we're okay with.
Yeah, I would have gone for Letter from America rather than 500 Miles.
Okay.
Because 500 Miles does not... They're Scottish, but it doesn't feel Scottish. Although, it's sort of... Yeah.
They seem broadly Scottish.
That's... 500 Miles, I think, feels Scottish in the same way that Kareem Pollard's stuff does.
Kareem Pollard?
While Letter from America is explicitly Scottish.
I've heard...
A big chunk of it is just a list of Scottish towns.
I've heard them twice live. I heard them at Trowbridge 2 years ago. I heard them at one of the Glastonburys. That's to say, at one of the occasions on which I've been to the Glastonbury Festival, not one of the many parallel universe Glastonburys, although that would be cool. But both times, when you said that they destroyed me, I thought, I wouldn't think of that as emotional music. It's really... good melody, good. I mean, I really like it. But both times there were all these Scottish people, and in fact at that time at Trowbridge there were people in kilts and with funny Scottish hats who were really, really, really getting into it majorly. And I'm sort of okay, yes, jolly good.
I'm going to say that has the same effect on Scottish and presumably Irish, because of me, diaspora people, as Cousin Jack has on you.
Okay.
Because the thing is, while it's the Scottish song, you could sing the exact same song from Ireland and just replace the town names.
Yeah.
And I suspect, even though you never lived in Cornwall, you get all weirdly over-emotional with Cousin Jack, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, hang on. I make a bit of a thing about liking because my daddy was Cornish. It's
But
also
it
very,
does
but it's also. I think Cousin Jack is a song that apply. It's about home. So it could apply. You could be Irish and actually still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, sorry, it's Letter from America. I'm going to use the word explicitly again, but it's explicitly about being away from home and being away from home for financial reasons.
Yes, sure.
So I feel like, I react to the same way as that. Obviously, when I saw Proclaimers live and had my awakening, I was going to say I was very, very drunk, but I was also, that was the year where I wasn't very well, and then the lady shouted at me, and then I did a load of drugs with some old people. So so I don't really know what was going on that year at Trowbridge.
We also had on the list some silly Scottish songs. I put the original I Belong to Glasgow. You put A Bag of the Cobblestones Are Unaware Of doing Donald Wedge Trousers.
Yes.
I
feel the better choice.
No. I was going to say, I thought You Can't Shove Your Granny Off the Bus, which is a stupid song. But no. The I Belong to Glasgow is a great song. I mean, I think that's an objectively a great song. The Donald Wedge Trousers. I mean, I assume that was an old song.
It is. It is Andy Stewart.
Yeah, but it's not a old Scottish folk song. It's something Andy Stewart wrote in the 60s.
Right. Did you really think it was an old folk song thing?
Not a folk song that June Tabor sang on Loch Ness, surrounded by people with claymores. But I assumed it was something that had been made up in pubs. I didn't.
Oh, I thought it was so sort of transparently a kind of something written sometime between the 30s and the 70s sort of thing.
Okay, but. Actually, I turned up the Andy Stewart's version, which is very funny until he does the end. Here's how Elvis Presley would sing it. I just want to kill him. I just want to kill him. When he's doing it as a...
Time has done your work.
Sorry?
I said time has done your work for you.
But actually, when he's singing it as a cod, but affectionately cod, so it's... But no, I think the I Belong to Glasgow. I think... I forget how it goes, but what's the point of being teetotal? Because then you'd have lots of money, you'd have to lend it to people. I mean, it's a timeless truth.
I find, I'm not suburban, am I?
No.
If anything, I'm too far the other way in being scary working class and so on.
Oh, in the city.
Yeah. Glasgow terrifies me in a way that no other city on earth does. Me and Tim have genuinely got lost in the near lethal bits of LA and things, and not really given a shit. Or I have not given a shit, and Tim's said afterwards he was quite worried I was going to get a shot. But Glasgow is not. Glasgow just scares me.
Have you read Lanark? The thing in that. Well, I mean, Lanark's a great book in lots of ways, but there's a thing in that.
Not good as his other one, Lady's Name Year.
1982, Janine.
Oh yeah, the Frankenstein thing. Is it Janice?
It's Janice or just Justine?
Justine, but
Justine,
the
I think it's the
Frankenstein.
same name as
I must at some point just catch up with all these things. But I read Lanark when it was quite a new book when I was a teenager. No, I mean, as in when I was a teenager and I hadn't read a lot of sort of grown-up books. So I remember he had rude bits. But no, there's a thing in that where he talks about the cities that exist in reality and in the imagination. So that if you've never been to London, there's a London of the imagination. If you live in London, you live in London and the London of the imagination. Yeah. Glasgow, there is no Glasgow of the imagination apart from a couple of drunk musical stars, which I think was
I think that's a really, really good way of putting it.
But on the other hand, I listened to the old boy singing the musical song about I Belong to Glasgow and think, I'm feeling so homesick for Glasgow. Don't you think that he puts that there's something in that? You think it's just awful, don't you?
It clearly just didn't hit. It kind of bounced off me.
You're a jelly sweet.
Jelly sweet.
We've just opened a bag of minstrels, and in the spirit of the programme, we're going to deep fry them. I don't know where it was, but when I was a kid, we went on holiday to somewhere in Scotland for a week. And we went into a fish and chip shop, and they genuinely had deep fried haggis on the menu. So I had deep fried haggis, and I thought that was quite nice. I rather like haggis. But I remember when I was 13, the idea that not only were we in Scotland, but they were really selling haggis seemed quite amusing.
Aww. Have you ever had a breakfast tray?
A breakfast tray?
A breakfast tray. No. Which is one of Scotland's culinary contributions. It's basically a white... They sell it in shops and supermarkets and things. It's a white styrofoam tray with the ingredients for a fried breakfast in it.
Okay.
Which is basically meat in 4 different colours and 5 different shapes. It's just... It's basically someone's put a pig in one end,
Right.
and then run it through one of those Play-Doh fun factory things at the other end.
Because a full Irish breakfast is a full English breakfast, only with white pudding as well as black pudding.
And potato farro.
Oh, potato and possibly soda bread. But I mean, it's basically it's got all the nice things in a full English breakfast and some others. I'm not sure if a full probably now. A full Scottish breakfast, somewhere posh would be, fried haggis in whiskey with fudge.
I think a full Scottish is black pudding, white pudding, haggis, and a horrifying kind of rectangle of sausage meat.
Now, when I said I put a dreadful song on the list and then quite liked it, which one did you think I was referring to?
I thought it was You Couldn't Shove Your Granny Off the Bus.
Oh, no. I mean, again, I'm sorry, I put that on because, that is quite a funny song. Although it misses out the one I put misses out the second verse where it goes, you can shove your other granny off of us. You can shove your other granny because she's your daddy's mummy. Anyway, no, it wasn't that one.
I had that in my head for 7 hours the other day because of you. Oh, it's all chaos. The cats are running about places.
When I was compiling the playlist, I included Mr. Paul McCartney's Man of Kintyre, which was the best-selling English record until Live Aid, I believe, and Live Aid was then I believe beaten by the charity reissue of Bohemian Rhapsody. But for a long while, Man of Kintyre was the most successful, sold the most copies. And, it's the tour. It's rather good. Do you not think?
No. I wish I had more to bring to the table than that, but...
It's a good melody. And it starts off with... I think what's interesting, given that Paul McCartney was quite so furious about what Phil Spector did to the long winding road, given he presumably had complete control over Man of Kintyre, it seems to be doing very much the same thing, of starting off with McCartney's voice on a guitar, and then at various points bringing in, Highland pipes, and by the end it's a huge production number. I mean, it's,
It seems like the McCartney... It seems like him actually being the person that was the punchline of people's jokes about him.
Hang on. We could probably do a whole podcast on the Beatles at some point.
Please let's not.
Okay, well then, here's what I would say if we were doing a podcast on the Beatles. Now, it is obviously true that neither Lennon nor McCartney did anything as solo artists that was as good as what they did together. What McCartney brought to the table was an intuitive ability to come up with fantastic melodies. What Lennon brought to the table was being a cynical bastard. And there's no doubt that if the Beatles had stayed together and McCartney had gone to John and said, look, I've just come up with this song, da, 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 da. Lennon would have said, that's brilliant, but don't use those words, use some other words, and here's a bit I'm going to add, which is about how all Scottish people are bastards, and it would be a better song. And similarly, similarly, there are a lot of Lennon's furious, angry, no one loves me songs, which would have really been helped by some corny melody in the middle. That goes without saying. But I honestly think that stands up a lot more than some of the more respected Paul McCartney solo stuff. Like, people are prepared to say that Venus and Mars is a decent album. And it is a decent album. But
What individual songs would you say are more respected than Man of Kintyre?
As you said,
you said the album.
So are people prepared to take that off and say that's quite that's Paul McCartney? That's the Paul McCartney who was in the Beatles, right? That is. And,
that's why I said individual songs.
I can't remember any individual songs off Venus and Mars. There's one called Venus and Mars, and there's the comic book reference one, isn't there? That's Magneto and the Titanium Man, and Junk. No, that's on a different one. Junk's a decent little song, but again, it's a sketch for a song he needed to hand to John and.
Because pop culture can name 4 post-Beatles...
Paul McCartney songs. Man of Kintyre.
Frog Chorus.
Yeah.
Band on the Run.
Yeah.
And Live and Let Die.
Okay. Yeah. None of them are hugely respected.
No. And I'd say Man of Kintyre is the most Fluffy jumpers and countryside vegetarian Paul McCartney.
Yeah. Anyway, it's very unreasonable to use the frog chorus as a stick to beat Paul McCartney.
Oh, you notice I didn't?
No, you didn't. But people do.
Yeah.
People absolutely
But if
do.
you exclude it, Mullock and Tyre is the biggest bag of wank.
Because it's hardly fair if someone commissions a pop songwriter to write a song for a children's programme to then say, oh, you wrote a children's song. That's
But
you should have had the
he
integrity.
was rich enough not to do it. Once you're someone who's rich enough not to do it and chooses to do it, you know, there's a point. That's the point of where you'd hope people, if you were getting too bad, would step in and go, "Calm down," but you're still allowed to be a bit snarky about it.
I think that Mullock and Tyre is a decent song.
Yeah.
I think it's.
I think people should email in, and they should vote for whether Mullock and Tyre is good or whether it's Big Bag of Wank. And where should they email in?
They should email to mail@folkbuddies.co.uk.
And if they email in,
Yep.
I will put their names in a bag,
Yeah.
and someone will win a mug.
A mug? You've got a mug this time. I got a mug from Blackbeard's Tea Party.
That's not the mug, though. We should
No,
stress
that's my
not the mug
precious
they're winning.
mug. But Blackbeard's Tea Party sent me a mug. Which
Yes!
was really sweet.
Friend of the show.
I was really touched. Really pleased with
Because
that.
you were running distribution for them on...
We gave out tea bags for them at Glastonbury. I wasn't even aware there was a group called Runrig. Or
No! I've been... The whole way through the podcast, at the very beginning of the podcast, I was going to issue a comedy warning that listeners should be aware that this playlist contained Runrig. So... You tell me you didn't know Runrig.
I was not aware of Runrig. What are they famous for? Apart from
That, basically.
I think that was fantastic.
I'm sure if I'd seen them drunk at the end of Falmouth, I'd be... not Falmouth, Trowbridge, I'd be going about how brilliant Runrig were.
So I thought...
But I haven't, so I'm not.
Sorry, people haven't played the playlist. Runrig singing
Take the High Road.
Loud to an audience of about 1 billion people, and they're all singing along.
Yeah.
Okay. Said I wouldn't talk about nationalism.
When?
At the beginning, I said I wouldn't talk about nationalism.
You then talked about nationalism all the way through.
No, serious question.
Go on.
Don't imagine you actually watched Last Night of the Proms a couple of weeks ago. That had Fisherman's Friends on it.
No, gosh.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm sure you had seen Last Night of the Proms at some point.
Yeah, probably.
You're right. Okay, Last Night of the Proms, Englishish people with Union Jacks.
People who would punch you in the face for calling them Englishish.
English
The
people.
non-tourist ones.
There are a lot of tourists there as well. But, okay. English people, British people, singing Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory and Jerusalem and waving flags and getting quite into it. Every year, people, should we be uncomfortable with Last Night of the Proms? Don't know.
Yeah. I don't have a choice. Absolutely am.
You are, yeah.
Really fiercely so, yeah. Not historically been a fantastic sight for me. Lots of shouting people wielding Union Jacks.
The video or the recording of Runrig, as I believe they're called, singing Take the High Road, with all these Scottish kids on each other's shoulders. You'll take the high road! Is there any similar discomfort? Are we okay with that? Or is it just the because you can't say that the Scots weren't sort of a bit involved in the British Empire. There's
not, but I think that's down to me being perhaps patronising rather than if I was, you know, a completely unbiased what's name grown in a lab, I should have the same discomfort with both of those scenes. As it is, I've grown up with the Union Jack being a symbol of power and the Saltaire not, so it doesn't have the same gut reaction. I just think
it also helps that Take the High Road's a better song.
Yeah, it is a better song.
It is a better song.
But you know, but there are good. There are probably good pro-English songs. Rule Britannia is not one of them.
Rule Britannia is not a good song. Rule Britannia never was a good song. Rule Britannia I cannot defend. Okay, it has to be mentioned before we stop. It has to be mentioned before we stop. We have to talk about unpleasant things. The chorus.
See, this is what I thought. You talk about that the way I would talk about the Take the High Road. So
Okay, sorry. Okay.
because again, it's that kind of embarrassing nationalism, isn't it, rather than scary or impressive nationalism.
I forget exactly what Dick Gockham said about Flower of Scotland. I assume he said it was shite.
You'd be never implied.
I don't know, he says on his webpage he talks about it being jingoistic. I think it's a fairly good song. I think it's interesting. It's got the Flower of Scotland has got the hills are dark now, tum-tum-tum-tum, which is almost exactly like in the Sky Boat song, Burned Our Homes. I think it's an okay song. I think that 20 years ago, and the Corries are an okay band. I mean, I've never seen them live, but they're pretty good. I think that 20 years ago, if you're at a Corries concert and they said we're now going to play the national anthem and play Flower of Scotland, and you were Scottish, that would be great. I think now it's practically become the Scottish national anthem. I think actually it's cloying. It's cloying.
I suppose because also there's not the context anymore of the English national anthem being a common thing to be played at the end of mainstream concerts.
No.
Or mainstream events,
No.
Because it'd be really weird if they played it at the end of the pictures nowadays.
Oh yeah, I can't remember the last thing I went to where anyone played the national anthem.
Trying to remember. They wouldn't have done it in where I grew up anyway.
Well, I can remember. It was actually a St George's Day dinner at the Liberal Club.
I think that's the oldest thing you've said ever.
Okay, sum up.
Scotland. Land of contrast. Scotland, like Ireland but richer. Sit down and tell it. He might tell it well.
I'm passing you over to Tim the Roadie.
Yeah, so because I was working in Bathgate outside of Edinburgh, and I'm very much aware there is an Edinburgh-Glasgow rivalry going on that permeates quite a lot of sort of Scottish society, and I was aware of this in Edinburgh. So I was in the canteen, and it occurred to me that I know there's various rivalries going on, the Edinburgh-Glasgow rivalry going on. I don't know the details. So I did ask in the canteen, because I thought I should know. So, Celtic and Rangers, which one's which? And there was just a silence descended on the canteen table. I think somebody said, well, there's never a question I thought I was ever going to hear asked. So I said, no, which one's from Glasgow and which one's from Edinburgh? And there was a little pause and I said, they're both from Glasgow. At which point the penny dropped that was not part of the Edinburgh-Glasgow rivalry. But
And it's Celtic, isn't it?
Yeah. Celtic is the Celtic is the thing. Celtic is the football.
Yeah, that of course allows me to tell my favourite joke.
Go on.
Oh, which is
Gives Tim his payment for his.
why are there so many more Rangers supporters than Celtic supporters? Because it's easier to shout "fuck the Pope" than "fuck the moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland."